Before we wrap up this chapter, I want to add a menu to make it easier to navigate between the home page and the roster page. The menu will mostly look and act like the one from the guided tour in Chapter 1, but it will be a bit simpler. In Ionic, you create a menu with the Ion menu component. The Ion menu is an Ionic component that implements a side menu. As with most other Ionic container components, it can contain a header with a toolbar and a title, along with some Ion content. The typical side menu consists of a list of pages made from a list of Ion items. The menu can be customized with a variety of behaviors. If you want the menu to obscure the main page content, you can set its type attribute to overlay. Other choices are push, which cause the page content to slide with the menu, or you can choose reveal to achieve a similar but subtly different effect. With reveal, the menu content itself is stationary, whereas with push, the menu content moves with the page content. You can specify what side the menu is on by setting the side attribute to either start or end. If you choose end, make sure your menu icon is on the same side of the main contents toolbar, or it will look weird. You can disable swiping the menu by setting swipe gesture to false. If you want an item in your menu to close the menu when you select it, be sure to wrap it with an Ion menu toggle component. Otherwise, the menu will stay open. The Ion menu toggle can also be used to open a menu, hence the name toggle. By default, it will automatically hide itself whenever it detects that its menu is disabled or is being presented in a split pane, as we're doing here. Because of that, if you want it to be visible all the time, be sure to set its auto hide attribute to false. Don't ask me how long it took me to debug that the first time I forgot about it. There is more to a menu, but those are the basics, so let's build one now. Create a new file in the Components folder. Call it menu.tsx. This is where we'll define the menu. Replicating what we saw during the tour, create an app page interface near the top that will define what a page looks like. Give it a title, a URL, and an icon. Next, create an array of these objects. Inside the array, provide two object literals. One for the home page with the appropriate URL and icon, and then one for the roster page with its URL/roster. And let's use the icon called people. If the editor doesn't recognize the icons, you can import them from ionicon/icons. Next comes the menu itself. Just like the roster page, it's a React function component. Call it menu and set it to an arrow function that will return some Ionic content. To build the menu content, create an Ion menu element with its content ID set to main. This value must match the HTML element ID of the Ion router outlet, which was main. Trust me on that one, but we'll double check it when we add the menu to the markup. For the type, I'm partial to overlay, but feel free to try push or reveal. Inside, add an Ion header with an Ion toolbar and an Ion title. Inside the title, provide a title such as menu. Just after the Ion header, add an Ion content tag, and just inside that, an Ion list. This is where the menu will be constructed. We'll do this by iterating over the app pages array. The strategy is similar to what we just saw with students. To do that, open a curly brace to execute some code. Call the app pages arrays map function. This function will get an arrow function to be executed for each element of the array. That function will receive two parameters, the page object and the array index of that object, 0, 1, 2, 3, so forth. The arrow function needs to return the markup for each object. The first element is an Ion menu toggle with its key set to the index variable. If we don't provide this index, React will complain that each child in a list should have a key. It'll still render, but it logs an ugly warning, and we don't need that. As I mentioned earlier, set the auto hide property to false, unless you enjoy watching things vanish for no apparent reason. Inside the toggle, place an Ion item with a router link set to the appPage.url. Doing this automatically turns the item into a hyperlink, which is pretty cool. Make sure you get the binding syntax right as I'm showing here. Otherwise, you could end up sending your users to a route, literally called appPage.url. Set the router direction to none or root, your choice. This affects the animation. It's subtle, so I'll let you play with it and decide which you prefer. If you want a visible line separating your menu items, set the lines attribute to full, or omit the attribute entirely. I'm not a fan of the way it looks, so I'm choosing none. Inside the item, add an Ion icon with its slot set to start, and its icon set to the appPage.icon. Again, pay attention to that binding syntax. Make sure you close all your tags properly and that all your curly braces are closed and matched and lined up. There's only one line left. We need to export the menu function. Otherwise, we won't be able to import it into the app. To make the menu visible, open the app.tsx page. Immediately inside the Ion React router, as its first child, add an Ion split pane component with its content ID set to main. Make sure the split pane completely wraps the Ion router outlet. I'm doing that here with the macOS shortcut Option down arrow. On Windows and Linux, it should be Alt down arrow. Add the menu tag as the first child of the Ion split pane, immediately before the Ion router outlet. We already added the route to the roster page, but in case you didn't, you need it here inside the Ion router outlet. Finally, for this file, you need to set the Ion router outlet's ID to main. I thought that had already been done, but apparently not. Next, we need to add a menu icon to both of our pages. Nope, it's not automatic. So open the home page at home.tsx. Inside the Ion toolbar, just before the Ion title, you need to add an Ion buttons component with slot equals start. Then an Ion menu button component inside of that. You don't need to add any text or icons. Those will be managed for you automatically. Then, you need to do exactly the same code inside the roster page. Just copy and paste the same block. Save the file and give it a try. You should now be able to navigate between the home and the roster pages with ease. And that pretty much does it for this chapter. So let's recap what we just did. If you want to add a page, these are the things you need to do. Create the page component itself with the markup and code you want. Add a route with a URL so that the users can get to the page. If you want the page in your application's side menu, add it to the app pages array with the URL, title, and an icon, and repeat as needed. We'll add more pages as we go, but for now you've seen the basics. If you want an extra challenge, take a look at the chapter challenges I have provided alongside these lesson videos. If you run into trouble, be sure to leave some comments.